Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT News episode 391, recorded Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. Talkin Android with Google at I/O 2023. TWiT News is brought to you by ACI Learning. IT skills are outdated in about 18 months. Stay ahead of the curve and future-proof your business's competitiveness with customizable, entertaining training. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit to get more information on a free 2-week training trial for your team. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Google I/O 2023. We're outside of the Shoreline Amphitheater where Google I/O has happened this morning. I'm Jason Howell, Huyen Tue Dao, Ron Richards.
Great to be here after many years. This is my first I/O since like 2015 to be in person, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great reason for everybody to meet up at the same place. We had a lot of fun on All About Android last night, and we're having a lot of fun today because we're sitting down with Dave Burke, VP of Engineering for Android, and Sameer Samat, VP of Product Management. And we just always look forward to this opportunity. So first and foremost, thank you for giving us some of your time. And I have to say, like, you finished the keynote like an hour and a half ago, maybe. And here you are sitting down at a table with us. So I feel incredibly fortunate for that.
Is the adrenaline still pumping? Or have we come down a little?
Yeah. I might like full.
So how did you feel about it? How did you the show from the audience standpoint? It was great, but
it's nice to be back.
It's nice to be back. I mean, that's the summary. I feel like if there's one thing we've learned in the last couple of years is that, these in-person events where we can all be together again are just so unique and special. And so for me this year, I was like, well, if I'm going to do I/O, I want to go all in on live demos because that's what people come for, right? And they kind of like get excited with you when it works, and they maybe commiserate when it doesn't, and they feel the tension. And so I had a lot of fun today. We just demoed a lot.
Did you do live demos? I missed it.
I'm just kidding. Pre-recorded.
Yeah, Dave had quite a few live demos. I think he has the dubious distinction of coming back in 2 I/O segments to do demos. I don't think we've ever had anyone else do that. So, yeah, but it all went well. So demo gods.
I was going to say, it all worked out all right. I mean, well. I'm sure you both have enough experience that you go into those, no matter how prepared you feel, with trepidation because anything could possibly happen.
I had a plan A, plan C, plan A, B, C, and then plan D was my personal device, my back pocket. I was gonna know that works.
And plan E is to run screaming out of the room, your hands over your head.
It all went really well.
It all worked out.
Well, I think if it wasn't abundantly clear, the overarching theme, and we talked about this last night on the shows, like if we had to guess what we're going to see tomorrow, I mean, there was no guessing. There was no question. It was going to be artificial intelligence. And I think there's so many announcements around AI that maybe just from a broad kind of view of what you guys are bringing to the table here, it really felt like the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that generative AI is here, and here's how it plays into our products. Because when I think of something like ChatGPT, I think of this destination I have to go to in order to use it. But Google is basically bringing that AI into the products that we're all already using. Would you say that's a fair assessment, that's kind of like the story of AI with Google right now?
I think that's right. I think you just step back for a minute. AI is something that Google's invested a lot in over the years. And, a friend of mine asked me recently, was like, why is it all suddenly why did it suddenly take off in the last 6 months? And what happened? And, I think of it as like a trifecta. So 3 things. So it's more data, and we all have an intuition for that. Oh yeah, more data, more compute. We all have an intuition for that because we see our phones are faster and our laptops are faster. But the real difference is the models got better. That's what caused that sort of nonlinear shift. And the model, there were really 2 models that have really made the difference. One is transformer models, and the other one is our diffusion models. And actually, these are things that we worked on at Google, quite early on. And actually, Google researchers published the original transformer paper, and we can nerd out all on it if you want, but I won't go too deep on it. But it's really kind of ushered in this whole generative AI sort of era, if you like. And we've been using it a lot. Like, so if you use search and you type in a very esoteric query, it will sort of bypass all the caches and you'll hit what we call BERT, which is, it's actually an encoder. It's like a transformer encoder. And so we've been deploying these technologies for quite a long time. But I think deploying them in a generative form is something that we haven't done as much of, right? And so I think that's what you see at today's keynote. And there's a range of stuff from workspace to the search generative experiences to the things we showed on Android. But yeah, it was a pretty exciting,
Yeah, and I think it's exactly what you said though. The opportunity I think that we've always seen with this kind of technology is the technology is super cool. We want to make it available for developers to use. They'll build amazing things with it. But there's so many developers inside Google who build products that we all depend on every day. How can those products get better with this technology, right? And so I think what we wanted to do today was to showcase not just the technology, but also how the technology comes into each and every one of those products that we all use, and what can it do for me? Because that is, I think, a thing that people are curious about. Is like, okay, I've heard a lot about it. I've played with these chatbot things, and they're cool. Like I can definitely see things I can do, but like how. What's the big deal? Like, how's it really going to change? Well, I love the Gmail example that Aparna and Dave showed, where you can write a very short, terse prompt, and it'll generate the email for you. I mean, who doesn't? Right? Yeah, who doesn't think that they're going to use that every day? And so there's so many just possibilities. So I was really excited about how we showcased some of that, and then I think with Android, we wanted to kind of keep it a little lighter, and we were working on a whole roadmap of stuff. Some we can probably hint at today, but I think the things that we showed, we wanted to keep it a little bit lighter and just also show that AI can be fun and help you just express yourself in creative and interesting ways. So, obviously Dave showed what you can do with messages by Google and just like rewriting what you're about to say to somebody. And then also the generative wallpapers, which are just neat, and I think really relatable. So that was the goal of today.
So in my experience, so much of the conversation with AI has been like, oh, the robots are coming, they're going to take my job and all this sort of stuff. And it's interesting to see. And like what we're talking about is the application of how you take this technology, and like the wallpaper is a great example. It's like, I love San Francisco. Let me press a button and get a illustrative way of it. And I feel like that kind of helps bridge the gap between this kind of like fear of AI versus where it's no different than the code. It's just another way to do the stuff we do on our phones. So,
I like how you said that, because, for us, so I was nerding out a little bit earlier about like diffusion models and transform models and all that stuff. But actually the hard part in my view is like, how do you make this approachable, right? And relatable and fit for purpose and honestly safe. You got to be careful because think about the generative AI wallpaper, the way it works. There's structured prompts. You pick the different options you generate. We could have had an open text box, but an open text box is not approachable because it's like, here's a blank canvas, draw something. You're like,
get creative.
Get creative.
Come up with something.
Create. And then also like there's a safety aspect to it. Well, okay, what the hell can I create? Is that even going to be safe for work kind of thing? So, or safe for my kids. And so, I think the solution we came up with, it seems kind of obvious in retrospect, but like when we were thinking of all the different types of ways, internally we call it Mad Libs, by the way, where you have these like drop downs.
Nice.
But I think the idea is like very simple, and it's what Sameer was getting at. It's like, it's applying this stuff and figuring out how to apply it. And actually, honestly, this is like such an exciting time. Like this is the perfect, being on Android and this time in computing history is just like perfect, because we have all this amazing set of like algorithms, technologies, infrastructure, and then we have all of these surfaces and user problems. And so, honestly, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know like the operative word a lot in like the zeitgeist is generative, but watching the keynotes, both the kind of main keynote and the developer keynote, I couldn't help but, this is corporate speak, maybe my bad, but synthesis, like a lot of it is just bringing together different tools. And I know you talked about maybe like letting people like myself, developers, kind of see the possibilities of it. And for, I guess most of our viewers aren't necessarily watching the developer keynote, but something I was surprised about was that even AI and like there's going to be an Android Studio chatbot. And that feels like the like epitome of a synthesis where, hey, like here are these different resources, here's things that you usually look up. Yeah. Let the bot kind of like do things for you. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I am super excited about Android Studio bot. We had it in the developer keynote, and I mean, it really could have like held its own in the consumer, even because it sort of it taps into your imagination, and it makes programming, I think, more accessible. But if you think about what it's actually doing, so today or yesterday, everything's changing so fast. But yesterday, you would be in Android Studio and you'd be like, coding along, and you're like, gonna curse and not like curse. Doe. Like, how do I do this thing? And so you would go to like developer.android.com, or frankly, you'd go to Stack Overflow, and you would sort of go to these resources and you'd search and you sort of look at the results. Is that what I want? And maybe it is. Copy and paste, take some pieces, like clean it up or whatever. Now you just go to your point, like you go to StudioBot and you're like, hey, I got this like. There's an error in the compiler, in the Kotlin compiler. Click, what is this? And it will tell you what it is and how to fix it. Or you could say, hey, I'm stuck in this point. Tell me how to do this, and it will just give you the code. And you press a button. It's beautifully syntaxically highlighted, and then you press a button and it inserts the code for you. And so it basically just makes that whole process so much easier because the information is encoded in the foundational model. And so we've done a ton of work in like in fine tuning that and like figuring out how to make it seamless. And then coming back to this, this technology, like I was talking about safety earlier. You also have to think about like, okay, so I work in an enterprise. I don't want that code, leave it, that's my company's code. I don't know what the rights are for that to leave the IDE. And so we had to think through all that about not sharing the code. And so I think what's interesting, like from a product management point of view today, is like, how do you have to think through all these different angles that are new. But StudioBot. And I think StudioBot's kind of like that, as you said, synthesis. It's in that genre of like, sort of a co-pilot or whatever you want to call it, an assistant, or, that's helping you, and it works really well.
All right, real quick, I'm going to butt into this interview and thank ACI Learning. TWiT News is brought to you by ACI Learning, of course. IT Pro offers engaging and enjoyable IT training to level up your career or organization. And now IT Pro is a part of ACI Learning. With expanded reach and production capabilities, you're going to receive customizable training at any stage of development so you can future-proof your business, retain top talent, and upskill teams using ACI Learning's wonderful content and its team of dedicated account managers. Your enterprise needs cohesive, cutting-edge training to keep your team compliant and ahead of the pack. Choose an existing course, let them combine modules for a tailored solution, or just have them custom design a course to address your specific needs. You can fill out a form at go.acilearning.com/twit to get more information on our free 2-week training trial for your team. We thank them for their support. Now, back to the interview. There were a few examples given today, and we've certainly heard this about generative AI, earlier than today, about the ability of these generative AI systems to write code. And I guess where my mind ends up, and we joked about this a little bit, it's like, oh, I'm a developer too. I can go to, Bard and plug in what I want and I get code. I'm a developer, yay. But what do you think about how tools like this actually transform the role of a developer? Because it does kind of move the goalposts as far as what it takes to be a developer. Sure, you need to have developer chops, and I'm not saying a system like this is going to completely replace developers, but it does alter the needs, the requirement of that developer and their knowledge to a certain degree. Maybe it propels them to another level. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, how does it impact that?
One of the things I've always found is that, as an engineer, if you have time to actually dig into the whole business problem that you're solving, you're just so much more motivated by what you're doing, as opposed to like, here's a spec, like, let me go, like nobody really wants to do just that, And so I think, but sometimes it's pretty hard because it's like, you have a lot of minutia to get through, right? So I think the first step is just like, can we use this technology to get as little focus on the minutia as possible, not to the detriment of products, but like maybe we can increase the quality while we do that too, And I think it'll just let everybody pick their head up just a little bit and just say like, okay, like how can I actually, like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we solving? Is this the best way to solve it? And I think the line at Google, honestly, historically between like software engineer and product manager, I don't think product managers write a ton of code at Google, but I think software engineers play a lot of the product manager role as well. And I think that's really good. And I think over time, as we've just seen in our company, there's just like a lot of code and a lot of maintenance and a lot of things to do. And they've started doing like more and more and more software engineering and a little bit less of the product. And so I'm excited about kind of rebalancing that because I think just people are so much more motivated when they get that time back.
Yeah. The other reality is like, if you're, a full-time coder, and especially if you're a rusty coder, that's me. Like there's just a lot of tedium. Like there's a lot of like, how do I do this boilerplate thing again? And like, I just want to focus on the innovative idea of this product that I'm building. And so this, that's what this does. I think in the limit, if you think about coders or magicians, they can make things appear and do things. We're bringing in more magicians in the limit, but really we're just automating the kind of tedium in a lot of ways. Is maybe that's not ambitious enough to say, but that's why I think when you see the developers in Shoreline today, when they saw Studio Bot, they're like, oh yes, hell yes. They're not worried about their job. They're like, this is going to make me so much more productive.
So it becomes how do you use the tool to be creative?
Exactly.
To be innovative,
I can be more I can be more creative, more innovative, more productive.
Right.
And it's interesting that you say that the tedium of this, because it's easy to hear that and be like, and because I will take a step back. I do know, I was participating in the Club TWiT Discord for some of our members during the live event, and some of the demonstrations, right? Like composing an email, that you write in a couple of words and then you can expand it and everything like that. Some of the people were joking, well, this is all like, baseline, like tedium stuff. Like why this is so not creative? Why are we kind of, writing to this level? Why doesn't it elevate? Why doesn't it this or that? And when I really thought about it, I was like, but wait a minute, like a lot of what we actually do in our lives is very tedious.
Right.
The forms that we create, the standardized emails that we send out to people to ask, hey, can you blah, 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 blah. A lot of that is incredibly tedious.
Circling
and these systems are just mirroring what we're already doing.
Right.
So if we don't actually have to do it, the computer can do it.
It's interesting because if you think about like now we're getting kind of more technology. Look at the evolution of technology. Like people spent days doing the laundry and then we got a washing machine.
Exactly.
And that
I was literally going to make that analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you think about, for any of the product managers that are listening, how many times have you, late at night created some presentation deck and then you're like, oh, I got to add notes, because it's someone else is going to give it or you're going to give it. And like, I just love the feature that Aparna showed today where it's like automatically generate the notes from the slides. And,
my goodness.
And it's just like, okay, now you're really starting to talk to me about what can help me,
Right.
And so I think this is where like AI can really be made a little bit more understandable. And frankly, I think I've heard so many people today talk about like, just when can I use it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I was there signing up for every wait list.
Yeah.
Like let's go here. I'm like, sign up. Right.
Well, and that's kind of the beauty of it. When can I use this? How can I use this? And the how can I use this is, well, just keep using the apps you're already using.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Eventually this button's going to appear.
That's right.
Or however that is
I
presented.
think that's right. I think it's that pervasive, and I think it has that broad an impact on our products. So that's exactly what is going to happen. It's just going to permeate and appear everywhere.
Yeah.
So switching gears, like staying on the AI topic, but like here, Google I/O keynote, like you mentioned, it's a consumer keynote, right? Very focused on what it does. Historically, a lot of the conversation at I/O has been around the next version of Android. I don't think you guys said Android 14 once in the keynote. Was that by design this year, or how does that,
Yeah, yes and no.
Yeah.
Dave can elaborate a lot on sort of how we've been evolving our thinking around that. But I just like taking a quick step back. One of the realizations that we had is, as the consumer keynote broadens its audience, it used to be long ago that I/O, like most of everybody that watched it was a developer actually. Mm-hmm. And over time, what's happened is it's become more than just Android. It's become more than just developers. It's kind of like the whole Google narrative. And what's interesting, actually, just as a quick sidebar, is that a lot of the folks who are Android developers would tell us, could you all just take a quick step back? But like before we get into the APIs, could you just tell us like what are you trying to do? So it was because developers are users too, and so they're consumers as well, so they're interested. So I think what we wanted to do in when we talk about Android or really anything is just talk about it from a consumer experience standpoint. What will you get this year? That's cool, and leave the vehicles to the details because a lot of folks. I think you're the audience that listens to this, and I think all of us here, we're like pretty interested in those vehicles, like what's in Android 14, what's in this, what's in that. And so that is important, and we can go through that. But I think for the general audience, what we realized is that they just want to know what's going to be new and that they're going to get it all, And so we just sort of take it from that perspective instead of chopping it up.
We have more vehicles. You probably noticed we have these like quarterly spotlights and that we lean into. We have we can update apps independently of the OS. We've been able to do that for a long time. That apparently that was innovation for some people recently. And And
Still feels pretty innovative to me. I know what it was like before all that.
Yeah.
But the way it is now, it's miles different. I love
and
it.
then we have like play system updates where you can actually we could literally update the virtual machine on an Android S, version, and increase the performance by just changing the VM with an updatable module. Like we have like very sophisticated update mechanisms in Android. We probably don't talk about it enough. I mean, we like can roll these A/B updates. We can test them, roll them back. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then we have like Google Play services, and we have like Jetpack libraries, and so we have all of these vehicles. And so exactly what Sameer said, and actually like maybe a little bit of inside baseball. We used to like when we did our product planning, we used to sort of have like we'd write an at a glance sort of summary docs. We'd be like Android 11 at a glance. Now it's like Android 24 at a glance, right? Like we just think about the year, right? And then we talk about the different, we talk about what we want to do to Sameer's point and what we want to deliver, and then we have the vehicles. That's sort of a subtext. So there's multiple vehicles as well as the core OS.
When you said 24, I immediately thought, wow, you guys are planning like 10 versions ahead. I was blown away. That's amazing.
But it's funny you mentioned that because during your demo, I think when you giggled when you mentioned Jetpack with the
drag and drop Jetpack Compose, the drag and drop library. I'm sorry, I was like really excited because I was getting ready to like write my own system, but
that was great.
It was like almost Wynn's own
I was
personal, like copy.
Just in time before you.
No, we play the Compose drinking game on the show where every time I get to talk about Compose, Wynn takes a drink. But then it gets a little more confusing now with Magic Compose, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So.
We may or may not have changed the name of that 24 hours ago. This is how we do product design. Compose is amazing. We should talk about Compose another time. Compose is amazing. I love Kotlin and Compose. It's like so elegant. It's so nice. I keep telling folks internally who don't code at Google, like, this is so good. You realize like it's really nice. Anyway.
But I mean, it connects to other things that we've talked about. And as you mentioned, you're trying to take the minutia, the boilerplate out of daily life, whether that's a developer or a consumer. And so I feel like it feels like the roadmap, the game plan the last few years, at least from a developer's perspective, has been, hey, do you actually want to have time to think about the product level or the higher level engineering? So it all kind of fits.
Yep.
Synthesis.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I say TDM, it's like it's sort of like what's not tedious is when you're innovating and using the code to create this. Here's my idea, and I'm bringing my idea to life. What's tedious is like, how do I close the camera handler again, or like the camera object? Like, where's the camera? Well, I know the camera one API. That's the thing where you're like, that's the TDM part where you want just the bot to be like, oh, here's how you do it. Oh yeah, paste the code. Boom, done. Let's go.
There are about like dozens of developers cheering when I think one of the examples that Jamal gave for the Android Studio bot was remembering to put internet permissions. So just for the audience,
everyone hits that.
Everyone has forgotten to give the app internet permissions.
Yes,
so
definitely.
that's kind of one of those things that this will help us.
I think I do it every time.
Every single time.
Create something I forget. I'm like, why is it? Oh yeah.
Internet permissions.
Yeah. I can't believe I said camera handle. That dates me. As you can guess which operating system I started with. Handler. I mean, we can guess which operating system I started with. Anyway, enough of that.
All right, I'm here again. Just real quick, TWiT News is brought to you by ACI Learning. The days of boring, archaic training methods are finally over. 94% of CIOs and CISOs agree that attracting and retaining talent is becoming increasingly critical to their roles. ACI Learning's private boot camps actually get your team up to speed on a technical project or certified on the latest technology. So you can be entertained while you train. You can feel empowered to keep your organization safe and secure. The training industry's completion rate is barely 30%. Well, ACI Learning blows its competitors out of the water with an over 80% completion rate. This is the format that IT professionals actually want. ACI Learning holds ISO certifications, so you know your business is still in the best hands possible. Fill out the form. Just go to go.acilearning.com/twit, and you'll get more information on a free 2-week training trial for your team. All right, more interesting stuff coming up right now. Well, so just to go back just real quick on as far as Android 14 is concerned.
Yeah.
Considering everything that we've just talked about the past 5-10 minutes, what would you say is the story of Android 14?
I would say it's more, this release is a little, sometimes we do very like user-facing sort of visual changes, like when we brought in Material U, that was a really big one, right? I think this one is more, what's the right word? I mean, plumbing just sounds too negative, but it's under the hood sort of architecture, making this up on the fly.
Which is maybe not like a sexy, like
right. It's not
someone sees that and they're like, oh, I've got to have Android 14 because it's got under the hood architecture changes.
But it's
important.
It's faster. It's got higher performance, right? And so we did a lot of work on. We have two projects. The code names internally, I don't mind sharing them. Is Snowbird and Falcon. And the way I think of how I remember snow is the S sounds is close to Z, which is freeze. Okay, I'm losing myself here. But and what we're doing is we're trying to reduce the number of the impact of broadcasts. And so what we often find is, Android has this idea of a broadcast and an app can listen to it and the app can wake up or come out of a cached state and you can get like thundering herd issues and you can get a lot of churning on the IO. And so what we're doing now is we're not actually taking, we're actually allowing apps to basically stay cached for a longer time. So we sort of queue up all the broadcasts for an app and then wake the app up and go, here are your broadcasts, rather than one at a time doing it and it's coming in and out. And then another one we're doing is like, if there's a broadcast like battery change, it happens all the time. We sort of batch them up because you don't care that which one, you just need to get caught up. And you collapse it to one. So that's an example of, and that makes a huge difference because it's sort of fundamental to the operating system. So that's Snowbird. And then Falcon is about really refining our foreground services. They tend to get, these are the notifications that pop up for an app and you can't swipe, the ones that won't swipe away.
Yes.
But they're important in a way because it's kind of conferring to the user that this app is running, right? But it's pesky. And so what we realized was like, okay, well, first of all, like there are some legitimate cases where you want that. And then there's some cases that are like probably not ideal. And so one case they were kind of, I would say misuse is the wrong word, but they were used for that because there was no other choice, was like when an app needs to download some data, like maybe it's a weather app and needs to grab a snapshot of the data or it's a news app or something. And so what we've done is we've basically created a new set of foreground services. There's not one for data. Instead, there's now a new API job basically for data that doesn't require a foreground service. And then we've categorized the rest of them into like, is it a camera? Is it a health app? Is it, a location or something like that? And so what you should hopefully see over time is less nuisance foreground services. And that will also help our performance. So that's an example of like one of the things we're doing internally. Health Connect's another one. I don't know if you want to mention that because it's a big change.
Health Connect's another one. So, Health Connect, I think for a long time, we have been focused on helping people connect different health services to each other, right? And that's important because, if you have a Peloton device and, you have Peloton at home and you have a, Wear Watch and you have an Oura Ring and a Withings scale, you're like, oh, I gotta where do I go to like dock all this information? It's actually important to realize that you're building your own personal health record. There's what happens at the doctor's office and then there's what happens with all this information. And so in the ideal future world, you'd be able to dock all that together, right? And then share it with only who you want. And I think there's going to be a lot of new insights that come from that, connectivity, because your doctor today doesn't really have full access to that information. They don't track that, and you don't necessarily have all your records either, in your hand. So being able to bring all that together. So Health Connect is a system that sits on your Android phone to essentially manage the data flows between those things and do it in a safe and private way where you provide access for data to move from one app to another, and it's all in your control. It's all on the device. It's encrypted, so we made that part of the platform. We've been working on it independent of the platform, and we decided it reached APIs and so forth. It reached a maturity level where it's not part of the platform. So that's really exciting.
That a mainline module as well?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to quick mention is, we've been working on security and privacy every Android release. So it would be like amiss if I didn't mention a couple of the things. One of the things that I'm pretty excited about that we're doing, and it seems small, but I just wanted to mention it because I think the impact will be outsized for folks who really care about this, which is, when you're giving an app permission, for example, to location, right? We, of course, added a while back while in use permissions, right? But now from the safety labels, the data that when you upload your app to Play, you fill out a thing called a safety label, which is, what do you do with this data that your app collects? Well, that information from the safety label is now piped through to the notification, to the prompt, the permission prompt. So when it asks you, do you want to give this app location permission? actually a little snippet there from their safety label, which will say this app does share data with third parties for location. Yeah. Which is like, that's information. Because when we realized that, we're like the safety label, and then we looked at the permission, and a lot of times you answer the permission and then you're like, wait, but the safety label's over there. It's like information I could have used, right? So we pull that in now, which I think is a really, like, it's a small insight, but I actually think it's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other things so on privacy that reminded me, we've improved foreground services so one of the issues we've seen, not so much in the US, but I mean, Android's such a huge platform globally. We've seen some abuse where apps sort of will launch a full screen intent takeover of the phone. And so now we've changed the policy so that really it can only be like a clock, like an alarm clock or a dialer, which are kind of what you would expect to do it and nothing else. And so it might seem like a small thing, but it's important. A couple other things to mention. This is not so obvious. That's why I want to mention it, is share sheet. So one of the challenges we have with share sheet is
we went deep.
Everybody
it's not our proudest moment. I'll be honest.
It's okay. It's okay.
Even some of the Google apps have their own custom share sheets.
Yeah.
And so what we've been doing over time is improving the system one. And so, for example, we've improved some of the custom targets and share sheet in Android 14. But what's not really easy to understand from blogs and stuff is that we now have a plan for all the Google apps to adopt the system share sheet. So you'll see, because now the share sheet's brought up to a level where because they had a valid reason. Each team at Google had a valid reason to have a custom thing, just like anyone building an app. And so now I think we finally got to the system share sheet to a level that is where the apps need them. And the Google apps are, pretty sophisticated set of apps. So you'll see over time, you'll see more coherence coming. So that's one thing that's not clear. And then something that's hard to pick up from blogs. The other one is Ultra HDR. That's our fancy name for, so HDR is like high dynamic range, right? So you've got like brighter range of colors effectively. And one of the challenges is like, you can't just introduce a new format, because then if I share a HDR photo to an app that doesn't understand it, it gets desaturated. So we have a new approach where you have a JPEG and it has the standard dynamic range in the sort of main body of the JPEG. And then we have a gain map that goes alongside it. It's in the file format container. But it means that if an app is savvy and understands HDR, it will take the gain map and then expand the SDR to the high dynamic range. It doesn't change the color space. Color space is the same. And so that's a way of us introducing HDR in the platform. And why is that important? Well, I think one of the things is we have these amazing cameras on many devices like a Samsung or a Pixel, but the photos tend to be the best taken from the camera. And when you then use the social networking app to take the photo, it's not so good. This will help those cases. So that's
no new file format.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
just JPEG. Yeah.
JPEG, that's great.
Yeah. So, actually, a lot of what we do is like, how do you introduce these things with a sort of a back compatible approach that doesn't make things worse as everybody's catching up. And so that was one of those things that took a little while to get right. But that's something. I was just looking at my little notes here to try to remember. There's so many other things. I mean, system UI. We talked about the lock screen clock, which was just something that a lot of people asked us for to customize. And it's like, I mean,
it feels like that's been a long time.
It's been a long time going. Yeah, sure.
I mean, within the realm of Material U, this idea of a device that you can make fully customizable, and then the clock is kind of like, well, what about that thing?
What other thing? So we got around to that, and no AI was harmed in the process. And then custom shortcuts, which is what was what we were requested. A lot of people requested as well. The other thing that we're doing, it's still not GA or whatever you call it, generally available. Is predictive back, but I'm really excited about it. It's this thing, back is such a core concept in Android, and so the challenge is like
storied history.
It has a storied history, and the challenge is like you're deep in end activities, and you come back to the final one, and now you're gonna fall back to home, but you don't know, and so predictive app shows you a peak, an animation peak. Mm-hmm. We were planning to launch it in 14, but it just wasn't quite, the quality bar wasn't quite right. So we decided we still did a bunch of work. You can still turn it on in developer options, but it wasn't quite to the bar we wanted. So hopefully we'll land it for next cycle. But that's just it's a cool feature that I like.
You mentioned clocks. I wanted to add one more clock thing, but it's not for phones. It's for watches. So we have this watch face format that we introduced, which is pretty cool. It's this it's declarative XML file, basically XML format that works with this watch studio. So you can, with this, sort of IDE interface, define a watch face. And the reason that's cool is it's just like fun to design these watch faces. I expect a lot of developers to do it, and there'll be a lot more watch faces, which I think for all of us who wear watches is exciting. But the other thing is, what we found is that people were kind of building watch faces in a lot of different ways, and you can get yourself in trouble battery wise pretty quickly when you're designing a watch face. And there are some safeties in the OS that obviously help with that, but you can go ahead and get yourself kind of run up against the rocks. And so what's nice about the Watch Face Studio is that all that code is generated for you, and as the platform gets adds new capabilities for improving the efficiency of the watch faces, including more offload to like the little processor that's on the device, etc. The Watch Face Studio will just like recompile, and you'll get all the benefits of that stuff. So you don't have to sort of like recode your watch face over and over again, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I imagine developers love when those kinds of things are made,
Yes, please. We like things
less reliant upon your absolute attention to it. But of course, it's always there. Okay, I promise just one last interruption here. TWiT News is brought to you by ACI Learning. Technology is one industry where opportunities outpace growth, especially when we're talking about cybersecurity. 1/3 of information security jobs require a cybersecurity certification, and ongoing training is critical to avoiding redundancy. Let ACI Learning help you choose the best certifications for your career and uncover the suitable funding options to help you pay for your training. Don't just land a job. Start a secure, lifelong career. ACI Learning is with you every step of the way with binge-worthy, on-demand, virtual instructor-led training. All you got to do is visit go.acilearning.com/twit to learn more and use code TWIT30. You'll get 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. All right, one more time, back to the show. I know that we're running a little bit short on time, and we haven't even talked about devices. So why don't we spend just a couple of minutes just kind of focused on how Android is kind of relating, how some of the changes to Android over the last couple of years, right? We were talking about Android 12L.
Yeah, I feel like today was the culmination of what a couple of 12L being like, we want to embrace larger screen devices, and we're like, wonder why, and then we find out the tablet's coming, and now with the Fold, this is kind of
actually that when you were asking like what's Android 14 about, that's kind of where I was going to go, which is there is a ton of, as Dave said, behind the scenes work that's been done, but to be honest, it's a culmination of multiple releases. 12L, which is kind of a bit of an off-cycle release that we did, but because we really wanted to start getting this in the hands of device makers and developers, because when we saw foldables initially, start to hit the market and take off, we were just incredibly fascinated by this form factor. And Android usually leads in these form factors, but I think one thing that we could do a better job on is making sure that we hit that polish level more quickly. And so with foldables, we just saw an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, large screens are a thing, because of this new innovation. It's an opportunity to reinvigorate that whole category of devices, all the way from tablets to foldables and kind of like the different size factors in between. And so what you see now with this release is, and you saw Dave demo a whole bunch of this, like it's very powerful. And the developer capabilities are there. So it's easy. It's not complicated to build apps that take advantage of drag and drop and so forth and so on. We have set ways of doing it. So it's not a choose your own adventure. You can always do that, but at the same time, it's nice to have defined clear paths for golden paths for people to walk through to make this happen. And I think that we're now on, nth generation of foldables, right? And what I really want to give a lot of credit to the Samsung team here, because I think they pioneered a lot of this.
Yeah, they paved the way.
Yeah, they super paved the way. And we not only did they do that with their hardware, but we've worked with them really closely. Like this is the first time that Pixel is launching a fold, but Samsung's had a number of foldables up until now, and we've worked with them on every single one of them. And a lot of the features that you saw today, actually, a lot of the innovation was done in tandem with them, and a lot of those components are actually shipping on their current devices. And so what's really nice is we've been able to kind of build this category together. And now people are jumping in and making it even a more interesting category. You have Oppo and Xiaomi and Google and a whole bunch of other companies jumping in. So we're super excited about it, and I think that does come all together in 14.
Yeah, for sure. And then with the Pixel tablet, of course, like we've talked a lot about tablets because we feel as if, the tablet space in Android is very murky because, iPad dominates in terms of, people think of tablets. I'm a proud owner of a Lenovo tablet. I use it all the time, but they tend to fall under a media device, or I use it instead of a Kindle.
Yeah,
right.
But now with the Pixel tablet, it seems like you guys kind of, returning back to that tablet spec, but over 50 Google apps being developed to optimize for the tab, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Other apps like Calm and Disney Plus optimizing it. It's a kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing, because in order to get developers to put the resources into adapting their apps, there need to be users, but in order to be, so how do you guys approach that from a developer relation standpoint?
I mean, it's always been that way for even when we started Android at the beginning for mobile, and I was really close to the start, helping start Android TV. It's chicken and egg. It's precisely what it is. And you just sort of got to ooch and scooch and make a little bit of progress. And then the apps come in and to make the platform, and you just have to iterate. I think, it's important for Google to lead by example here. And that means you mentioned the, over 50 apps. So we need to, show that we are committed. I think it's important for Google to have hardware in the tablet space and show we're serious about it. And that, that will help push forward. And then, more developers they see us do it. So you get more developers on, and then the products get better, and then more developers come on, and that's how you do it. One of the things you'll see, we had a blog post today about some of the third-party apps, some of the big names, and you mentioned Peloton, I think that was in the article. And you'll probably, we're planning every, I don't know what the exact cadence is going to be, but we'll have a series of blog posts because we're working with so many third-party developers, and we'll show the progress. So this isn't a sort of a one and done for Google I/O. This is a path. And the momentum is really good, and then the Pixel tablet, I think is a really nice product. I think you saw the foldable work that I demoed today, and all that translates to tablet too, right? So, which is really nice. And then I think one of the things I really liked about the Pixel tablet, just to talk about that product for a second, is, it's very simple. It has a dock, so it's always charged, right? So I've had I've had this thing for a year and in my home, and it's like awesome. It's like, oh, my tablet's ready, great.
Well, and it's a satisfying click.
And it's
it's very
That's
satisfying.
so important, right?
It just pops right on there. But I did find that actually a pretty unexpected, compelling moment from the keynote where, the presenter, I'm blanking on her name, but she had the tablet in the drawer. Rose, that's right. And the drawer opens, the tablet's in the drawer, and it's dead. And I've been there a million times. It's like, just give the tablet a home. Give it a home where it can get the juice that it needs so that it can be, your companion.
It's often the simplest ideas that are most powerful. And then, it has this nice speakers. When you dock it, the audio seamlessly translates. And then you sort of extrapolate this, and you're like, okay, so it's on the dock, and it's at a nice angle. Okay, so let's make it proactive. Let's have information that's useful for me. Or I turn off the light, and it will dim its screen, and it will turn into a clock mode. And now it can be a photo frame. And now it can be basically a Google Assistant. So it's basically a home hub now. And now it can be a controller. And so, it's sort of just all.
And we're Google. We've done a lot of smart displays. So we can do that over here too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was kind of what the question that popped up in my head. Like, is this a tablet first? Or is it a smart display first with tablet? You know what I mean? Which direction?
I mean, all of the above. But I mean, as an Android person, like I'm most excited about it's a tablet first, And I think if you talk to the team in Google, they'll tell you it's tablet first too. Because it has to be like actually it's one of the premises at the beginning is like it has to be a great tablet first, and so that was a focus.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I know we actually, I'm looking at the time, we got to round things out. Do you have we missed anything that we need to throw out there before suddenly we don't have our opportunity
I got to say
anymore?
Satisfying click. So I'm
check that mark. Check mark.
I did
that
get a
up.
chuckle from we were in the product demo pit for the press, and the woman from Google was over my shoulder, and I did it, and she's like, "It's nice, isn't it?"
Yes, it really is.
She knew exactly what I was doing.
Well, we are delighted every time we get a chance to come to Google I/O. Even more delighted when we get the chance to speak with you both. Just really want to thank you for taking time out of what is always a crazy day, Google I/O keynote day, to give us like 45 minutes of your time. We're just over the moon. So thank you very much for carving out that
Thank
time.
you. And we love what you're doing, and the fans of this podcast are really important to us. So thank you so much.
And we're fans too. So thank you.
Right on. Excellent. Well, Dave Burke, Sameer Samat, we will talk to you next time, hopefully. And everybody, we have our live coverage. If you missed it of the keynote, if you want to hear what Leo and the crew were saying while everything was happening, you can just check it out at twit.tv/news, where you find this podcast as well. So thank you so much here from the Google campus. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.